So, hi, my name is Mr. Robinson, and today I will be talking about hydroponics. Now, our school got this awesome hydroponics unit, and we're going to use it. Today we'll be looking at how does it compare to our traditional kind of in the soil farming, because it does something a little bit different, which is kind of what gives it its name, hydro, meaning water. So, how does this thing work? What is it? We have our soilless farms they use water full of nutrients, kind of like our soil farms. They have nutrients in there, but this is soilless, and there's a lot of pros, but also some cons. And we'll be talking about the pros and cons of hydroponics versus our soils here. The way this works is very similar to our soil-based gardens, where they do need sunlight because plants have to photosynthesize. But instead of getting their nutrients from bacteria inside of the ground, they're getting it from the water inside of our system. Now, the pros to this, why someone might choose hydroponics over a soil-based system is first, they are super water efficient. So when you pour water on your soil farm, the water gets in and then it tries to get collected by some of the roots, but then keeps passing through. The cool thing about our hydroponic system is it recycles the water. So there's a 50-gallon reservoir down at the bottom of our system here. You could scale up or you can scale down, and the water is constantly being pumped up to the top and drizzling down the roots of our plants. And so the water is recycled, the nutrients are recycled, unlike when it's kind of lost sometimes on our soil systems. The other thing is they're super space efficient. So we can stack these things. Unlike our traditional soil farms, is you could stack them, but this stacks a lot better. It's also made of these very cheap materials, so our plastics, and they have some towers out in the desert that are like 50 feet tall. And they pump all this water through in all these different pods. We can see in our vertical system right here this is only a couple square feet, but if we were to lay it out, it would cover up a lot more than I could put in the classroom with our soil gardens here. And so this is definitely favorable for like your apartments, your classrooms, and any other kind of small confined spaces. And or if you have kind of a smaller operation, you could always stack to the roof. The other advantage to this is you can do this inside, outside. It's also very controlled, so you're not relying on like some of your kind of spreadable fertilizers. You're not relying on weather conditions. This thing comes with a very large grow light, which will turn to some of the cons here in a second. But and you also avoid a lot of like your soil-based diseases from like different kinds of bacteria or bugs. It's very hard for bugs to lay their eggs inside of the water here because it's constantly being recycled, constantly being filtered. Now, the other thing, because it's in a controlled environment, is we get lots of growth. Because we're constantly adding nutrients, you're constantly testing pH, and the other benefit is it's super easy to add and take away any kind of nutrients and add or take away any kind of conditions. Now to the cons this is a pretty pricey setup. One of the pros to our soil thing that we're going to be talking about is you can buy land and you can use very simple tools and ways to kind of garden. This is you have to buy this whole kind of big thing made of PVC. You got to get lights. You have to get a pump, and you also have to have the know-how, which is kind of the next part, is technical knowledge to have to run this thing. This costed our district about $5,000, and I think they had like 15 of them, and that kind of added up. Now, this is also very energy dependent. You could have a system where it's kind of like outside and receives energy from the sun, but this definitely works best with a grow light, so you can kind of control your lighting season. Here in New Hampshire, We have a very short growing season, so by using a light, that's kind of an advantage. But it's also very consumes a lot of energy. So it consumes energy via the light and the pump. Also, you have to know a lot about amounts of nutrients that we're going to need inside of our farm and what pH ranges that your plants are going to need. Now, traditional farming, this is kind of what everyone's kind of used to when they think of farming and agriculture. They think of seeds in the ground and plants coming out. So we're going to talk a little bit about the pros of this versus our hydroponics unit and maybe the cons that we can avoid with our hydroponics stuff. So our traditional farming, again, it's a lower cost setup for the most part. It can get very costly as you start to scale your operation. It's a little bit more sustainable. This thing's made up of tons of plastic, and if you get into that kind of the microplastic stuff, we don't really know how that's going to affect some of our food that we're eating. The soil has a very good buffer capacity, meaning if there is a change in the conditions, the soil can kind of adjust to this, or the bacteria inside the soil can kind of adjust to this. And there's actually been some studies that say that food from the ground tastes better and is of more quality. Now to our cons is this can become resource intensive. So having to have a huge operation to water all of your soil. This is consistently being watered, so you can just kind of set and forget. You also have to worry about lots of different kinds of pests like soil-borne diseases, like aphids, or your beetles, or any kinds of things. So you have to kind of do a lot of spraying. And it's also weather dependent. So to have a larger operation that's like a good square footage it's going to be outside. So it's dependent on drought, your kind of adverse weather conditions, and that could lead to a lot of problems, which you can avoid by bringing it inside. And one of the issues with also that I wrote into bringing some of this stuff inside is you do get a lot of flies or nymphs inside of your room. With this, I have had zero issues with pests like laying eggs in the water or on the plugs in there. So that's a pro and a kind of a con for this. So in conclusion, they both have their pros and cons. And in my class, we've been kind of testing the pros and cons of both. I teach an Earth and Space class and a bio class. And in our Earth and Space class, we're kind of testing which one we're going to get kind of better results for if we're going to start growing crops in space. Now, of course, the space is a different environment than inside the classroom, but hopefully we'll get some good results. And the interesting thing is we're getting different results for different species, whether or not they do better in the soil or if they do better in our hydroponics unit. So for my next class, what we're going to be doing is kind of a demonstration of how to use this thing and how to plant in here. So we can do kind of a lesson on testing the conditions between our soil farm and our hydroponics farm. Thank you guys very much, and I hope I get some good feedback. I'll be looking at your guys' videos, and